Hello, this is Musa Qureshi again with Chris Day, and today we're going to talk a little bit about a slightly thorny topic, which is the handling by the BMA of this entire dispute about whistleblowing protection. So, Chris, can I put it to you? The BMA have been a little bit difficult to get information out of. They're not very forthcoming. But my understanding is that the BMA say that you failed a merits assessment and you had a weak case, and that's why they couldn't support you.
Yeah, well, the important thing is to see the difference between the appeal affecting all doctors in the country and my individual whistleblowing case. But I'm not going to dodge the question with the individual whistleblowing case. So they say with my individual whistleblowing case, that it's a weak case that failed their merits assessment and they couldn't back it. Now that's not exactly the whole truth. It initially passed a formal merits assessment with flying colours and in August, and then failed one in October, 5 working days before a deadline. So that's not the same thing as having a weak case. That's a strong case that's suddenly become weak.
Can I clarify something there? So you're saying it initially passed and then it failed a couple of months later. Was it the same law firm that passed you first and then?
Yes.
So the same people who said that you had a strong case, 2 months later said you had a weak case?
Yes. After promising to submit papers to the employment tribunal, almost negotiating the date in which they would be submitted, and so you might say that's okay, drop a doctor 5 days before a deadline, but then if you add to the mix my BMA rep being sent on special leave, and he no longer works there, and then if you also add to the mix the BMA failing to produce a formal trade union record of a principal meeting at the trust, it's got to start getting a bit more difficult for the BMA.
Okay.
Or it's certainly more than just a weak case,
So,
I would have thought.
So, Chris, I don't want to go too much into, obviously, the details of what happened. I'm not sure what the BMA story is in that regard. But just one thing. I mean, I would expect if a law firm was saying I had a strong case and then suddenly they decided I had a weak case, they would at least give some kind of in-depth reasoning why they previously thought I had a strong case and then suddenly it became a weak case. Did you have any such information from the lawyers? Or?
Well, we got an email, as I say, 5 days before the deadline that I would say disregarded key evidence, including a formal trade union record, which I would say would have increased the merits even further, the already positive merits. And they simply just say that record got lost. And when I go and try and contact the person, the author of that record, I'm told he's on special leave. And now when I contact them now about him, I've been told that he no longer works for the association.
Okay.
So it's difficult, isn't it, for them? It can't be accurately described as a weak case. It's certainly likely to be a lot more complicated than that. And we have to be careful what we say. But I think that's fairly objective, that it passed. It passed and then failed it 5 days before a deadline.
Let me stop you there, Chris, because obviously, I mean, it would be wonderful. Just we would love to have a representative of the BMA. You know, maybe perhaps give an interview on camera with us. But failing that, I don't want to go too much into the actual specific facts. I just want to go into things that are really accepted. And anybody here, anybody can actually see. So what I'm really wondering about, and which seems surprising to me, is that I understand a Lord Justice of Appeal has very recently publicly actually has allowed your appeal and has actually written in the appeal that you clearly have an arguable case. Now, I don't understand how a firm of solicitors think that your case is so weak they wouldn't even represent you, and a Lord Justice of Appeal is saying you have a clearly arguable case. So does that make any sense to you? Or?
Well, I mean, the important thing to sort of note about that is that the Lord Justice of Appeal is commenting about the wider appeal that affects every doctor in the country, and that's That's our claim, that Health Education England is an employment agency and should be caught by whistleblowing law. I can't really say that the Lord Justice of Appeal has commented on the individual facts of my case.
But would you not think that the BMA, I mean, as you said, this appeal is about something that affects every junior doctor in the whole country. Would you not say that the BMA, as a union, as the largest union, which so many junior doctors are paying quite high fees to support, do you not think the BMA should be actually supporting this kind of action?
No, absolutely. I mean, the way to understand this situation is to completely separate my individual case to an appeal that affects every doctor in the country. So now a Lord Justice of Appeal has said that there is an arguable case for junior doctors to have whistleblowing protection. It is astonishing that the BMA aren't funding it. There's nothing more to say than that on that, you know.
Yeah, because I keep hearing this thing about merits assessments and 50% rules and so on, and that seems fine to me when it's an issue that affects a single junior doctor or a group of junior doctors at a hospital. Perhaps they're working longer hours than they should according to their contract. But this is an issue which affects every junior doctor in the country, and the BMA are having nothing to do with it.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of warning signs about the whole thing, but you don't get no court of appeal if you've got a weak appeal. I mean, it's ridiculous to say that the other thing to say is we got our leave on a paper Sift, so we didn't even need to go to the court of appeal in an oral. So
effectively, what that means is, are you basically that? Because paper Sift is probably quite technical language, but are you basically saying that normally at the Court of Appeal a judge might say, well, you have to come to me and actually prove that you have a case that I'm going to allow you to appeal. But in this case, the judge said straight off, no, you don't even need to argue that to me. I can see clearly you have a grounds for appeal.
Well, I mean, the Lord Justice of Appeal actually used the term clearly arguable. Now, you can... That's different from arguable or could be arguable. It's clearly arguable, and it raises a matter of importance. Yet our union don't want to know. I mean, I would expect anyone looking at the Chris Day saga to just see all kinds of warning signs in it.
So, Chris, we're obviously these videos are very short, and we always seem to run out of time. But there's one key issue I wanted to discuss with you about the BMA. Now, I remember very clearly, it was probably about a year ago, on the Junior Doctors Forum, quite senior member of the JDC, the BMA Junior Doctor Council, saying that we were protected already by PEDA legislation for whistleblowing. There was nothing to really worry about, and so on. So it sounds like for quite a long time the BMA has actually been denying there was any problem there, and now. And similarly, I didn't. There didn't seem to be much support from the GMC. Now suddenly, I hear that BMA and Health Education England have both suddenly realised there was a problem there all along. Any idea how it took them a year to realise that? Were you not telling them this for a whole year, or?
Oh, that's just another thing that's difficult for them, isn't it? I mean, there's loads of things that's difficult for them. But yeah, I mean, they've actually claimed to have closed it. So how do you close a loophole that you've spent the year denying without going to court to set a precedent or Parliament to change the law? Well, you can if you're the BMA, apparently. But it's the BMA. If I was the BMA, if I was Dr. Porter, I wouldn't know where to start, to be honest, to explain my actions in this.
Well, I don't think he's bothering to explain his actions as far as I can tell.
I kind of understand him. Why? I don't know what he'd say, to be honest.
But it is interesting for me that the BMA has denied there's any problem, and then suddenly they accept there's a problem, but only when they propose a solution. Now, I have my suspicions that this solution actually is not a satisfactory solution which will protect junior doctors as they should be protected, but I understand we're waiting for an expert legal opinion on that before we talk about it on video. So I think we'll leave it there, and thank you very much, Chris Day, for talking about the BMA and the GMC and their stance on whistleblowing.
It's a pleasure.